Hello, students. Welcome to today's teaching. Today's teaching is on classroom management in early childhood classrooms. And I chose this particular slide design because I liked the little light bulb. The light bulb to me represents ideas. And what I want to do is share with you today some ideas for managing an early childhood classroom. So let's jump right in. First of all, picture this. There's a preschool classroom filled with 23 and 4-year-old children. Look at all the children sitting there. Looks like they're having a little group time or something like that around a rug, but about 20 children in that classroom. Or picture this, a toddler classroom is filled with 12 children under the age of about 2.5, so we've got some young children in the classroom. Or picture this. There's a kindergarten classroom filled with 25 5- and 6-year-old students. So it's a full classroom of students. And lastly, picture this. It's a family childcare home filled with 6 children from infancy through school age. So very often in a family childcare, it's going to be a mixed age grouping. So you might have some infants as well as some school age children present. So I shared those 4 pictures with you. And now I ask you to picture this. Each child is new to this environment. So they're new to that classroom. They may not be used to interacting with other children. They might have no siblings at home or no cousins that they play with, so they may have no familiarity with interacting with other children. They might not have experience choosing different learning activities. They might not have much experience with following directions of we're going to do this, then this, then this. They might not have an experience with being taught for and cared for by an adult different than their parents. So in a lot of families, the parent or guardians may be the sole provider of care. They might not be familiar with following a classroom routine. They might not have any experience with sharing toys and sharing equipment. And they might not be used to being away from close family members like their parents, grandparents, siblings, etc. Continuing with picture this, I would like you to now picture that you are the teacher of this group. It is your responsibility to keep the kids safe, to help the kids learn, to help the kids when they're missing mom or dad or grandma or siblings, etc. Oftentimes children do miss those that they know best. It's your responsibility to help kids know that they are cared for by you as a teacher. To help kids to understand your classroom routine. To help kids learn appropriate classroom behavior. And it's your responsibility to manage the potential chaos that could come from having so many children in a classroom. But we're going to learn some things to avoid having a chaotic classroom. How would you manage the task if you were the teacher in one of those classrooms? Today, let's learn about classroom management. I found this definition of classroom management. It says, what is classroom management? It's all of the things that the teacher does to organize students, organize space, organize time, materials. The teacher's doing all these things so that instruction in content and student learning can take place. So this was one definition I found. I really think classroom management is a combination of everything that we do as a teacher to help our classroom operate smoothly. Next, we're going to kind of equip a tool belt of some different approaches or different ideas that you can use to manage your classroom. First, I have a quote. Children engaged in active learning experience fewer challenges in classroom environments. Let me say that again. Children engaged in active learning will experience fewer challenges in classroom environments. So now I'm going to go through a whole bunch of different ideas and kind of expound upon them. So the first thing a teacher can do to help with classroom management is provide activities for children's engagement. We know that bored children have a tendency to engage in mistaken behavior. So if they're bored, they might not be doing the right thing. They might be taking toys from another kid, might be running around in the classroom, might just be having problems with other kids. They're going to be more likely to be engaged in mistaken behavior if you don't have things for them to do. So I encourage you to keep children from becoming bored by providing a wide variety of interesting, play-based, hands-on activities. I encourage you to provide open-ended activities that can be used and enjoyed by all the children in your classroom, independent of their age and maturity. One great example is providing unit blocks for children to play with, because unit blocks can be used by many different ages, and they can do a variety of different open-ended things with unit blocks. Another tip is to arrange learning centers to support engagement. I encourage you to spread your interest centers throughout your classroom. So we'll be learning more about interest centers in the coming lesson, but interest centers can include things like your math area, your reading area, a sensory table, an art area, a building area. Various things like that are your interest centers, and you want to spread them throughout your classroom. When interest centers are well spread out, children will spread out as well. So if we have activities throughout our classroom and across our classroom, then children are more likely to spread out to play in those different interest centers. If you have one cool thing in your classroom, all the children will flock to that cool thing, and you're likely going to experience some conflict because you only have one cool thing for the kids to do. So you want to make sure to arrange your interest centers to support engagement. And as I mentioned, we're going to learn about interest centers soon in our classroom. Another tip is to keep your learning environment fresh. Children get bored and their learning is not stimulated when they have the same learning materials available day after day after day. Children just get bored, as we would if we're doing the same thing every single day. Rather, I encourage you to rotate learning materials each week so you provide new opportunities for kids to engage. I encourage you to watch how children use the materials. And if materials are still actively being used and children are still enjoying using them and learning from them, you can feel free to leave them out because the children have shown you that they're not finished with something yet. If, however, the interest has faded, they're just not into something anymore, then I encourage you to change that out and provide something new that the children may be interested in. So be sure to keep your learning environment fresh. Next tip is to provide spaces for children to be in different group sizes. Set up your classroom with spaces for children to be alone, maybe a table with a chair for one, to be with one friend, perhaps a table with 2 spots, place for children to be with a small group, perhaps a block area, and with a larger group of friends. Maybe this will be outdoor when you're playing. Children will make choices throughout the day regarding the size of group that feels good to them. Just like with us, sometimes they want to be alone. Sometimes they want to be with a friend. Sometimes they might want to be with a small group of friends. So we want to make sure that those sizes can happen in your classroom. Another thing I encourage you to do is to provide soft spaces and materials to support children's comfort. So having a soft rug, a soft chair, perhaps some stuffed animals, some pillows, things like that, create a soft space for children's comfort. Next tip in classroom management is I encourage you to follow a consistent daily schedule. Children benefit from being able to predict what is coming next in their day. Just like all of us, we like to know what is happening and not have too many surprises in our day. I encourage you to create a schedule that includes arrival and departure times, group times, child choice time and interest centers, meal times, bathroom times, outdoor play, and rest. So make sure that your schedule includes everything that you need to fit into the day. Follow the schedule daily for children's comfort, and again, so they can predict what is coming next in their day. Another tip for classroom management is to provide the right amount of learning materials. Overstimulation, it's not good. Understimulation is not good. We want to work to provide an appropriate amount of materials so children have ample things to do and to play with, and they have choices to make. But we don't want so much stuff in the classroom that it's overwhelming. Next thing I encourage you to do is to make your classroom be what I call an extra teacher or two. When your classroom is set up well and maintained well, it supports children's development and engagement. The classroom kind of serves as an extra teacher, helping to manage children's behavior. The opposite is true as well. If your classroom is poorly set up, children don't know what to do, children are bored in the classroom, then you're going to wish you had an extra teacher or two to help you manage children's mistaken behavior. Provide multiple interesting choices, and I referred to this a couple slides ago as well. Children are drawn to novel and interesting activities, so anything new in the classroom draws our attention. Be sure that you have multiple cool things in your room to help children to spread out without overcrowding. So if you bring out one cool thing on a Monday, everybody's going to flock to that. So you want to have multiple interesting things for children to do to help them spread out and to prevent overcrowding. For young children, it's helpful to provide two or more of the cool toy so that one child can play at a time. So with very young children, they are still learning that art of sharing things. So instead of creating a frustration for them where if they have to share something, we might provide two of something. So if you have a drum out, you might provide two drums so each child can have one. So just another tip along with providing multiple interesting choices. Next tip is limit the number of children who can play in an area. An overcrowded area leads to conflicts between children over space and materials. The kids are just too crowded, there's not enough stuff to go around, they get in each other's way, and they start to argue and fight over the materials. So a way to avoid that is to limit the number of children who can play in an area. A good way to do this is to use chairs around a table to help children know the number of children who can play well in an area. I might have a table set up with two chairs, and that would tell kids, oh, two kids can play here. And I would have the appropriate amount of materials for two to enjoy and benefit from. Another idea that teachers may use is they may post a numeral. So you might have the numeral 2, and you might have two children pictured on this little sign, and you'll do this in an area to help kids know how many kids can comfortably play there at a time. So we will learn more about that when we're learning about interest centers. Another tip is to provide balance to your day. An ideal day provides a balance of quiet versus noisy activity. So you don't want your full day to be full of noisy activity where a lot is happening in your classroom. You want some quiet times where kids can just kind of wind down and have a quiet activity. Indoor versus outdoor activity. Whenever possible, you want to make sure you spend a good amount of time outdoors. Small group versus large group activity. So again, a balance so children are not always doing a large group activity together. Plan your day to balance your activity. So if you're a teacher in a classroom, really think through how your routine is going to go and how you can mix the day up with a balance of activities. The next quote I have here is teachers employing classroom management techniques provide support or provide children with the loving support that they need to do well in a classroom environment. I'll read that one more time. Teachers employing classroom management techniques provide children with the loving support they need to do well in a classroom environment. So now we're going to focus not just on how the teacher sets up that classroom, but what the teacher does in that classroom, who the teacher is, and how they behave in that classroom. One tip is for the teacher to provide advance notice prior to transitions. So I like to have what I call 10, 5, and 2. And it would work like this. If we have 10 more minutes to play before we're going to transition to group time, I would walk around and say, boys and girls, we've got 10 minutes to play. And then 5 minutes after that, I would walk around and do the same thing. Reminder, everybody, we have 5 minutes left to play. And then I would walk around again and say, oh, 2 minutes left. It's time to start cleaning things up. So here I'm providing advance notice to kids at 10, 5, and 2-minute intervals. To help children know that you will be transitioning to a new part of the day, provide notice so they know what is coming. Doing so helps a child finish an activity, and it also shows respect for children. We are all the same way. If somebody instantly comes to us and says, stop doing what you're doing, we may feel disrespected. It's helpful for us to know that we need to be ready to transition to the next activity. Another thing is to establish clear classroom expectations and rules. So depending on the age of the children, you might want to sit down with them at the beginning of the school year and really work together to establish rules. I found a couple things on the internet. The first one on the left shows our class rules, and some ideas are to have looking eyes. We're watching what everybody's doing, listening ears, we're listening to others, quiet mouth when somebody else is talking, helping hands, where we're using our hands to help others and to do things, and walking feet was another one on this one, just to walk when we're inside our classroom. The one on the right has some other kind of rules. Work quietly and do not disturb others. Raise your hand before you speak. Follow directions the first time. Listen when others are speaking. Show respect for school and personal property. And keep hands, feet, and objects to yourself. So these are some rules that you might see in a kindergarten classroom, a young elementary classroom. So it's good to establish clear classroom expectations and rules for the children, and to keep them clear, to keep them really minimal as to what you need to have a smooth operating classroom. Next tip I have is help children know they are safe, cared for, and loved by you as the teacher. Out-of-home care and learning may be new and emotionally challenging thing for children, so it might be tough. You may have separation anxiety that you're experiencing just when the child comes to you, and it's a new environment, and that can be tough for some children. So out-of-the-home care can be challenging for children. Some children come in and jump right in. Some children have a challenging time with that. I encourage you as a teacher to be there for children. Hold children if that's what they need. Hug children. Listen to children. Reassure children that parents are going to come back, etc. Just to be there emotionally for them, and that helps them to be able to navigate those emotions that they're feeling. I found in my work with children that children will eventually learn 3 things. They're going to learn that mom, dad, grandpa, etc., whoever those loved ones are, they're going to come back and get you every day. I always like to see this from the child's perspective and think, okay, I'm getting dropped off at a strange place. This might be my new family. I don't know that they're coming back. So reassure children that mom, dad, grandpa, whoever it is, will come back every day. Children will also learn that they're going to have fun at school. If you set up a great play-based learning environment, children will learn that school is fun and a fun place to go. The third thing that they're going to learn is that teachers love and care for them. I really think that children need to have learned these three things for them to feel safe, secure, and loved in your classroom. Next kind of tip I have for what a teacher can do when managing a classroom, I call it playing zone and circulating. Children in a classroom typically outnumber the adults. So as we saw in those initial pictures, your classroom might have 12, you might have 20, you might have 25. A family childcare might have 6 or 8, but there's going to be more kids there than adults. A way that I really tried to supervise a classroom and have my teacher supervise classroom was what I called playing zones. So each adult carefully observes and supervises a zone of your classroom. So I may be over in this half of the classroom while the other teacher's in the other half of the classroom. So we are breaking it down into zones so we can really focus on the zone that we're in. So that is a good way to provide good supervision in your classroom. When one teacher needs to do the majority of supervision, the adult can circulate throughout the classroom, constantly moving around to supervise all corners of the classroom. So in this case, I'm on the move. I am moving from this area to this area to this area to this area. By doing this, I can supervise what's going on, and also kids know that I'm there to help them if they need my help in anything. So I call this playing zone defense when you can, and circulating when you don't have enough teachers to play zone defense. Next thing I want to talk about is position yourself wisely. So while we may want to work one-on-one with a child, we always want to position ourselves physically so we can see the child we are working with, as well as the rest of the children in our zone or the rest of the children in our classroom. Backs to walls, please. So I always encourage teachers to do this to make sure your back is facing a wall. There's no kids behind you that you can't see because they're behind you. So if your back is to the wall, then the child you are working with is in front of you, as well as all of the other children in the classroom in front of you. And this works on the playground as well. So always try to position yourself where the world is in front of you rather than behind you. Next tip I have is work as a team. Having multiple teachers in the classroom is a beautiful thing when teachers work well together. One teacher, for example, can facilitate an activity while a second teacher oversees the classroom. Another example, one teacher can lead a group time while another presents an art experience. So work well as a team with your teammates. Get to know your coworkers and work together to benefit the children's experience. Next tip I have is speak softly to be heard. Whispers from a teacher are often better than the teacher who yells in the classroom. The teacher who yells in the classroom tends to get tuned out by the children because nobody wants to listen to a yelling teacher. So I would encourage you to remember to speak softly. Sometimes we can even whisper. Kids tend to get quiet so they can hear what we're going to say. Use your voice as a quiet teaching tool, and children who have learned to want to listen will tune into you. Next tip I have here is earn children's respect by respecting children. I encourage you to connect daily with each and every child. If you've got 20 kids in your classroom, this is a challenging thing to do. We're going to do another lesson on interacting with children and kind of how we circulate around and talk with each child. But I encourage you to try to connect daily with each and every child in your classroom. I encourage you to speak with politeness and kindness to the children that you work with. Remember, always remember that you are a model. Children are watching you, other teachers are watching you, and they're going to imitate what you do and say. So remember that others are looking up to you, and you want to make sure that you provide a model that is worth modeling. Something I learned as a teacher is that when children love and respect you, they are much more likely to cooperate with your guidance. So when children know that you love them and when they respect you, they're going to listen to what you say much better than somebody that they don't really have respect for. Next tip, and we're getting closer to the end, the next tip is to meet children's basic needs. Children who are tired, hungry, thirsty, or need to use the bathroom often have a tough time choosing appropriate behaviors in the classroom. We want to help satisfy these personal needs to help children to cooperate in the classroom. I once had a child come in, and every day he would come in and he'd be okay at the first, and then he'd start having some problems with other kids. And I could tell that this child, his name was Michael, I could tell that Michael was hungry. I would let Michael come over to a table, give him a graham cracker or something like that, and he would eat that, and then he would go back and have a much better time interacting with children in the classroom. So I could tell that he had that need of hunger, and I would help with that. Sometimes kids are just tired and they need to have a little rest time, maybe read a book with an adult, that kind of thing. Sometimes kids are thirsty. Sometimes kids just need to use the bathroom, and once they've met that need, then they are more easily able to cooperate in the classroom. Affirm positive behavioral choices. We're going to be doing another lesson on child guidance, and we will talk about this there as well. But when you see a child doing something good, such as building with blocks, coloring on their paper, walking in the classroom, etc., affirm this behavior, saying something like, "Ah, thanks for coloring on your paper." When we as teachers are affirming, children are going to hear that affirmation and be more likely to show the same desirable behavior next time as well. So they're gonna know, wow, the teacher noticed this. I'm going to do that again next time. So affirm positive behavioral choices. Create a classroom community. We want to help children learn to get along well with their peers, to enjoy playing with each other, and to care for each other. When you have a caring classroom community, classroom management becomes much easier because the people in your classroom, both the teachers and the children, genuinely care about each other and want to do well for each other. Next, I have use positive and effective child guidance tools. So we're going to explore child guidance in a separate lesson. We're going to learn a lot more tools that are similar to our classroom management tools, but a little bit different as well. We're going to learn a variety of tools similar to these classroom management tools that will also help us to effectively manage our classrooms. That brings us to the end. And I want to reintroduce you to those 4 pictures that we looked at the beginning. First was the family childcare with a mixed age group. This picture shows the toddlers playing together in the sand. This picture shows the kindergarten classroom. Got some kids seated at tables doing some work there. And then the last one, the preschool classroom. And I ask you, are you ready? Are you ready to manage one of these classrooms? Someday, if you go into early childhood education, you will have the need to manage a classroom. You're going to know some stuff to do with kids, some activities to help them learn about science or help them learn about math, but you also need to learn how to manage that classroom. So I ask you, have you learned any tools that you can use to help you effectively manage your classroom? I thank you for participating in this lesson, and if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you.